This is the Horse Radio Network.
You're listening to The Stall and Stable Show. Ideas for happy horsekeeping.
You've heard me talk about how important fencing is to the safety of our horses, as well as for helping to keep your sanity intact. We keep our horses in human environments. Thankfully, new research is helping us design those environments to better suit our horses' needs. But even as our farms evolve, one feature will remain the same no matter what: perimeter fencing. Whatever happens inside the boundaries of your property depends on your unique setup. The key is to keep the horses inside those boundaries. In this episode, I discuss the pros and cons of different fencing types that are often used to enclose a property's perimeter. Listen in. This is episode 113 of the Stall and Stable Show, brought to you by American Stalls. American Stalls is expanding their offerings, and if you've not checked in with them lately, today would be a good time to do that. In addition to beautiful stall components, American Stalls now offers stall mat options, rubber pavers, fencing, mud control grids, and the super cool bedding blocker. Visit them online at americanstalls.com to see what's new. Welcome back, listeners. Today's Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. I'm your host, Helena Harris. Please support our show by letting our sponsors know they're in good company. In addition to American Stalls, we are grateful for the support of Barn Pros, shipping their equestrian home and barn kits nationwide. You can find them online at barnpros.com. So hey, y'all. I'm stacking up on episodes this month because, well, we've got some cool stuff going on at Who Hollow, or hot stuff, as the case may be. Yeah, insert corny emoji with bouncing eyebrows here. I can't divulge exactly what the stuff is just yet, but I can tell you that you'll most definitely want to tune in to our first episode in April to find out what we've been working on. All right, before we dive into a discussion about fencing, which you all know is really important to me, I'd like to say thank you to a few of my wonderful listeners. Joy Dorsch, Pat Noon, and Erin Grogan. Your warmth and enthusiasm for all things horse is what makes recording new episodes of Stall and Stable worth the effort. Thank you so much for listening. Now, on to fencing. Before I talk about the types of material for fencing, I want to point out that any fencing you install should be at least 5 feet high at the top rail. Higher if you're near a busy road. If you have to be near a busy road, your fence is going to be everything. So 5-foot-high fence is 60 inches. That's so that horses who are motivated to jump that rail, either by lust, hunger, or fear, are less likely to do so if the rail is high enough to make them question their decision to break out, right? So 5 feet at a minimum. That's the top rail. All right, so first we go, all right, that's cool. I'll just find a 5-foot post. But wait, that post has to be 5 feet above the ground. You still need to sink the post below the ground when you install it. And depending on the type of wood you choose and your soil type, you'll likely need to sink that post to a depth of 3 or 4 feet. That is what's necessary to make the posts horseproof. You can talk to your fence installer to discuss in detail, but most residential applications will say, oh, you only need to sink your post a foot or 2. There is no way a fence post is going to be able to keep horses inside that fence if it's sunk only 2 feet. Even with concrete, the physics of it, the leverage point is too shallow to make that fence post useful in horse applications. So this all means that your post length needs to be at least 8 feet, right? 3 feet underground, 5 feet above ground. So now you're shopping for something altogether different. You're shopping for agricultural products because most fencing found in big box stores like Lowe's or Home Depot, those are for residential use and therefore are going to be much shorter than what you will need for horses. Here's where things get tricky. If you move to shopping to ag stores like Tractor Supply, they typically carry pressure-treated posts. Now, I'll post links to the pros and cons of pressure-treated wood in this episode's show notes on our website. But the long and short of pressure-treated wood is this. The chemicals used to preserve the wood are bad. Very bad. And they leach into the surrounding soil. You never, ever want to use pressure-treated wood near your horse's hay, feed, or drinking water. And for that matter, never use pressure-treated wood in your gardens or anywhere that would be considered a high-touch area, like paddocks, barnyards, inside stalls, or human spaces. The only exception would be the bottommost board inside your stalls, which would be the board or the wood that would come in contact with moisture and urine and other corrosive agents the most. It's also not likely to be licked or chewed on by your horse. This is kind of a hard pill to swallow. See, back in 2003, the Environmental Protection Agency, the U.S. Consumer Protection Agency, and the CDC all declared CCA, which is copper chromate arsenate, as a serious health hazard to humans and animals. And CCA is typically what's used to preserve wood posts. Chromated copper arsenate is a wood preservative that contains copper, which serves as a fungicide, arsenic, which acts as an insecticide, and chromium, which is the chemical. It's a chemical fixing agent which binds all of those other ingredients to the wood itself. So the substance has been in use since the 1940s, specifically for pressure treating lumber. And by the mid-1970s, almost every outdoor structure, right, the swing sets that we had, all that stuff was treated with CCA. And, for good reason. The insecticide keeps termites and other wood-boring bugs out. The copper helps keep fungus out and all that other rot stuff that comes with moisture. So, we thought it was a good thing. But people started getting sick and research was done and everybody found out that this stuff was really bad for human health. So by the end of 2003, manufacturers voluntarily phased out CCA use for lumber that was supposed to be used in homes and children's play areas, those residential uses. But because there was a voluntary recall, the U.S. government never quite banned it completely. They kind of didn't need to. So there's a little gray area here. But what this all means is that CCA and similar chemical preservatives still show up in commercial and agricultural fence posts. Tractor Supply, in particular, does sell wood posts in exactly the length we need for our horse farms. But those posts are treated with CCA, chromated copper arsenate. So you're going to go up to Stall and Stable, you're going to click on the links, you're going to look at some of the research, and you will need to decide what is an acceptable risk to you and what's suitable for your farm. Some people say that because these posts are, either they're used as corner posts for perimeter fencing on farms that are huge and horses never come into contact with it, it's fine. Some people will say if you run some hot wire along your fence, your horses will never get close enough to these treated posts to chew on them. Again, you're going to have to decide what's an acceptable risk for you. Do the research, but I will say that pressure-treated wood of any kind is worthy of doing some research. I will advise, however, that you do not use wood that's treated either with CCA, creosote, pentachlorophenol, if I'm even saying that right, pentachlorophenol, especially if you have a small property or you have horses that chew or crib. Now, I'm not saying that all pressure-treated posts are inappropriate for perimeter fencing, but I am saying that it's a documented fact that pressure-treated products are a health risk. Then again, so's riding without a helmet, and yet thousands of riders still do it. The good news is that there are wood types that are naturally resistant to rot and bugs. You just need to know where to look for those fence materials, and you need to know how to strike a bargain when buying them. I will do a little homework for you and post links to some vendors in the show notes who make really good fencing out of wood that's naturally rot resistant. It'll be up to you, however, to get the best price you can on the stuff. Because even with a very healthy budget, price is still something to consider. That's actually one of the reasons I like Barn Pros, one of our sponsors. When you browse their website and you dive into some of the barn plans that they have, they include, right on their website, baseline pricing for their structures. I love that. Who doesn't shop with price in mind? 1% of the 1%? Okay, well then there's the rest of us. Of course, there's always some variation on real cost based on your particular project, but unlike other builders or contractors, Barn Pros at least gives you a place to start from. It's just realistic, and honestly, very helpful when planning your private or commercial horse farm. It doesn't matter where you live, they ship nationwide. To find out more about them, just go to barnpros.com. Let's move on to the types of fencing we find most often on horse farms, and my opinion on each of them. The first is 3 or 4 board Kentucky-style fencing. This is post and board. It's my almost favorite. It's hardy, attractive, and strong if you do it right. If a board gets broken or comes down, it's easy and fairly cheap to replace it. Wood, however, often falls prey to rot and termites, and in colder weather tends to break down faster because it's constantly expanding and contracting in those freeze-thaw weather patterns that we all love so much. Maintenance can be a beast with 4-board fencing. If you decide to paint it or use some other painted-on protectant, you will be doing that every couple of years. So think carefully before you decide to coat your board fencing with anything. As I mentioned earlier, some types of wood are more weather resistant than others. Cypress, red cedar, black locust, even hemlock are just a few of those. So you can get your 4-board fencing in any of those wood types. I think perhaps one of the best choices for this ranch-style fencing is cedar. Cedar fences are durable. Cedar works naturally to repel pests. It doesn't need to be treated to be durable, and it's a super environmentally friendly option. It's also good in a wide range of climates, so including or especially in regions where there's significant snow and rainfall amounts during the winter. Another option for your 4-board Kentucky style or ranch style fencing, it's the exact same style of fence, but only instead of real wood, you might consider using HDPE lumber, right? That's the recycled plastic lumber. Our previous sponsor, Tangent Materials, who we still love, even though they're no longer a sponsor, I still love their fencing. And it works exactly like wood. It doesn't rot. It doesn't fall victim to bugs and termites. It looks really nice. It's easy to install. It cuts like wood. And to be honest, these days, I don't know if it is more expensive, less expensive, or the same as wood, but you price it out because if I had to do it all over tomorrow, I would go 100% with HDPE lumber for sure. So, and I believe that American Stalls has an HDPE version of their fencing as well. The Tangent is heavy duty, like really heavy duty, full, solid lumber. And I think the American Stalls is a little bit lighter, so it's a little bit easier to handle. It's not fully hollow, but it is hollow enough, so it makes it actually a little bit more workable. But I would recommend the HDPE lumber in the Kentucky, in the 4-board style. It's kind of the best of both worlds. Okay, number 2, split rail fencing. I have a love-hate relationship with split rail, but only because my horses like to chew it. Using it for perimeter fencing depends on how much acreage you have, your budget, and the availability of a wood type that suits your climate. I love the way it looks. It's really easy to replace a rail if one comes down or gets broken or rots. But you have to be very careful about the specific pieces of your split rail because there are some manufacturers who sometimes when the rails come out of the lumber yard, they're split a little thin, and those will break down a lot faster or they will break a lot faster. So you have to either work with a knowledgeable fence installer or be very specific that, when you place your order for the fence materials, that you can't get anything that's too thin. You're probably, and if they ship it to you, you'll probably get a couple of thin rails. So what we do is we buy extra rails from our local fence company, and we just keep them inside someplace so they're protected from the weather and they're backup. If one breaks or somebody chews through one, I'm looking at you, Susie, then we have another rail that's very easy to slip right into those holes. It's really easy to replace. Pine, cedar, locust, and oak are the most common, and they're really safe around your animals, your kids, your gardens. But again, you just have to shop around for the best price. So you'll find lots of options, lots of different wood types for split rail fencing. But where you'll be challenged is in getting the right length, especially in the posts. Because the stuff is not treated, it's primarily used for residential purposes. Gardens, yards, backyards, stuff like that. So you're not going to find the right length posts very easily. However, all you need to do is ask. So if you go to your local fencing company, like here in Rhode Island, there's one called Wood and Wire. I think we've got another one called Walpole Woodworkers. If you call them up and you talk to the rep there, tell them that you need custom 8-foot posts. So they might not have them in stock, but they can always order them from the lumber yard that they do business with. For split rail, what you may need to do is measure the hole. So you might need to tell them specifically how many inches from the top each hole for the rails need to be. And then they can order the post for you, right? So just because it's not advertised or, it's not in their catalog or something, doesn't mean they can't get it. And this is kind of a universal problem. Most fence people are not horse people. So you can say, I need an 8-foot post, and the person you're talking to might not actually believe you. Or, as has happened to me, they may substitute something shorter in your order because they think they know what's best. So whatever you order, when it's going to be used for horse purposes, double check everything and insist on your specifications. Politely, of course. All right. Split rail pros. Attractive, easy to replace the rails, easy to install, hardy, strong. The cons, wood can rot or fall victim to termites. It can be expensive or difficult to find untreated wood. Moving on, number 3, wire mesh with a top rail. So wire mesh is a great option. It's very popular. You'll see it everywhere, really, but specifically you'll see it down south quite a bit. It's an affordable choice. The no-climb wire mesh is designed with animal safety in mind. They call it no-climb so that little foals and other young livestock animals can't get their legs in there, climb up and over it, get their legs all twisted in it. And you want to look specifically for no-climb because there are other types of wire mesh fencing where the squares or the holes inside the mesh are just way too big. And it's very easy for a leg, a hoof, a shoe to get caught on it. Definitely not safe. So you really want to look for something called no climb. And we'll post links in the show notes for some of the vendors that make this stuff. Now, it's not as strong as wood. So you do need that top rail of either wood or some other hardy material. It is necessary for providing the strength you need, especially for perimeter fencing. Wire mesh also isn't gorgeous. I mean, it's not unsightly if you keep it tidy and maintained. It's just not fancy or as charming as the 4-board or split rail. Still, it's a very reasonable option for the budget-conscious farm owners Or even if you have a healthy budget, if you just have a ton of acreage to cover, it's financially practical. The other thing is you can choose any type of wood for the top rail, even a synthetic wood like HDPE lumber. Just as I mentioned before, if you can, avoid the pressure-treated stuff. Number 4, PVC, vinyl, or plastic fencing. Both of these get a hard no from me. When this type of fencing breaks, and it will break, it is very sharp and dangerous. I'll say that again. When this type of fencing breaks, it is very sharp and dangerous. Plus, it's definitely not as strong as wood or solid HDPE lumber. And actually, even some of the flex fencing. If any of my listeners also listen to Horses in the Morning and you follow Jamie Jennings on Facebook, Jamie and Flyover Farm were thankfully lucky to survive a tornado that blew through Norman, Oklahoma not too long ago. She posted pictures of a neighbor's fence line. It was vinyl fencing. All that was left was about 6 or 8 inches of stub of the posts with sharp points sticking up. It would literally look like hell to a horse owner. So I'll see if I can dig up that picture. If Jamie will share it with us, I'll show you. But that is typical of what happens when vinyl or plastic fencing breaks. And just a horse bumping up against it can make this stuff split and crack. Number 5, electric fencing. Okay, I do love electric fencing. I hate to say it, but only in very specific circumstances and not for perimeter fencing. When setting up paddocks or pastures that are new or temporary, I would rather have a 2-inch polytape fence because it offers enough zap to keep horses away from it, but the tape is wide enough that should a horse run into it, the pounds per square inch of pressure force on the tape is less than it would be with rope or wire. So that means less chance of severe injury to your horse. Rope or wire of any kind can slice and dice a horse in no time. So you want to sort of disperse that pressure, and the wider your fencing material, the less likely your horse is going to get hurt from it if they run into it. So the polytape usually comes in white or brown. White is great because it's highly visible, but brown is nice because it blends in with the landscape and looks a little less ratchet. Once your horses know where the tape is, what the boundaries of their turnout are, you should be relatively safe with brown. However, I strongly suggest that you use either white or yellow T-post caps if you do opt for the brown polytape. White and yellow are visible to horses. They can see it easily, and it's just a small thing that provides a little extra safety, even when your horses do know where the polytape exists in their space. And we always want to cap our T-posts. Always. Whatever color you do decide to use, make sure they're capped. So why this little extra insurance with the visible T-post caps? Because when a horse is in flight mode, even when they know the boundaries of their turnout, they may forget that there's tape in the way if they can't see it easily. That's a decision you can make based on your horse's turnout situation, their disposition, and the layout of your particular farm. I do not recommend step-in posts or single-strand hot wire. If you really need to keep your horse confined or separated from someone or something troublesome, that kind of fencing setup will not meet that need. I'm definitely a fan for electric fencing, but only in very specific circumstances, either for cross fencing, interior paddocks or pastures, but not for perimeter fencing. Number 6, metal pipe. This is popular stuff in the West because it's very easy to get. Personally, I am not a fan, but that's my personal preference. You can ask anyone who uses pipe fencing if they like it, and I bet they're going to tell you they love it. So I might not like it simply because I've never actually used it. I don't know. I don't feel 100% confident in what I just said, but I'm going to leave it there. I admit that it's much safer than plastic or vinyl fencing. It's easier to maintain than wood fencing, and usually strong enough to keep horses inside of it. Assuming, that is, you sink the posts deep enough into the ground to be stable. Pipe fencing that is installed incorrectly can be lethal. The downside to pipe fencing is that it's prone to rust, and unless it's installed and laid out and designed with a thoughtful eye, can be really ugly. Also, the spacing in between the rails needs to be wide enough where if a leg goes through it, that leg can come right back out. So at the end of the day, even if you don't think pipe fencing is beautiful, the saying goes, pretty is as pretty does. And I'd always opt for safe over pretty any day. So if pipe fencing is what you want to do, go for it. Okay, number 7, flexible vinyl fencing. Surprisingly, I don't hate this stuff. When installed professionally and periodically maintained, it offers a really tidy appearance and a very safe perimeter boundary. It's best when used with wood posts and can be electrified or not. I'm always going to err on the side of extra caution. If you're shopping for this stuff, look at the electrified version. The key to this fencing doing its best job is getting the tension exactly right. This is why the manufacturers sell those tensioner accessories with their fence packages. Tension equals strength. And if you've ever watched your young thoroughbred racing toward the fence on a misty day, you will know exactly how strong your fence needs to be. We'll post some links to some of the manufacturers that we think have a nice product. And lastly, for the love of all that is holy, please do not use high tensile wire or barbed wire anywhere near your animals. If you buy a property and there's wire around, make it one of your highest priorities to remove it immediately. This kind of wire fencing is nothing more than heartbreak waiting to happen. Now, there are a few more fencing materials available these days, but those mentioned in this episode are the most common. Do your research, plan an hour or so reading about pressure-treated wood, watch videos from different fence manufacturers, talk to your neighbors who may have fencing that they love or hate. But ultimately, you will need to match up your fencing with the size and layout of your property, the type of horses you keep, and your budget. But I will emphasize one more time that your perimeter fencing needs to be strong, visible, and fairly easy to maintain. If you need help planning out your farm or shopping for a property, not knowing what questions to ask either a realtor or a contractor or a fence installer, please feel free to book an appointment with me. You can go up to stallandstable.com, and if you are a private farm owner, click on Consulting for Private Farm Owners, or if you are an equestrian professional, click on Consulting for Professionals. Yes, there is a slight difference, and it's important enough when you're booking your appointments, but I am here. It's the click of a button. It's super easy, and if you are unsure about it, read the reviews from folks who've been there before you. If you are hoping to buy a horse property, but you're not sure if you can afford it, that's a great time to reach out to me. I can help you with financial projections, plugging in numbers, and figuring out whether or not your business can support the purchase of a horse property. And if consulting isn't your gig, we have plenty of self-help guides at stallandstable.com that you can download and work on this stuff by yourself. Thank you once again to our sponsors, American Stalls and Barn Pros. If you like this episode, I hope that you will share it with a friend. Share it on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or just talk about it in the barn. I'm always grateful for your support, for folks listening, and for writing in. So if you have questions or suggestions, please send me an email at helena@stallandstable.com. And that's going to be a wrap for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it.